The stars had always been full of life. Thousands of species spread across millions of worlds, each one different, each one strange in its own way. Some had scales, some had wings. Some were made of crystal or gas or living metal. They fought wars. They made peace. They traded and talked and sometimes destroyed each other. And then they found humans. Admiral Park Dohan stood on the bridge of his ship, the Harmony, and watched the planet below spin slowly in the darkness. His uniform was simple. His face was calm. He had commanded this vessel for 15 years, traveling from world to world, bringing medicine and food and hope to species he had never met before. This was what humans did. This was all they had ever done since joining the Galactic Concord 300 years ago. "Sir," said Kantaiho, his communications officer, "the medical supplies are ready for transport. The Velix government sends their thanks." Park nodded. "Tell them it is our honor." Taiho smiled and turned back to his station. He was a young man with gentle eyes and a soft voice. He had joined the diplomatic corps because he believed in helping others. Most humans did. In the medical bay, Dr. Yoon Nari prepared her team for landing. She had spent 20 years healing aliens. She knew the biology of over 200 species. She had saved lives on burning worlds and frozen moons and stations falling apart in the void. And she had never asked for anything in return. "Remember," she told her team, "these people are scared. They have been sick for months. Be kind. Be patient. Let them see that we are here to help." Her team nodded. They were all volunteers. Every human on this mission was a volunteer. The galaxy did not understand this. In the Great Assembly Hall of the Concord were representatives of 4,000 species gathered to discuss the fate of worlds. The humans were seen as strange creatures. Weak, soft, confusing. Ambassador Choi Yuna stood before the assembly and spoke of peace. Her voice was warm. Her words were gentle. She talked about cooperation and understanding and building a better future together. The Vethrak delegation watched her with cold reptilian eyes. They were warriors, conquerors, proud of their strength. Their high commander leaned toward his aide and whispered, "Look at her. So small, so fragile. How did these creatures ever leave their planet?" The aide hissed in agreement. "They have no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no armor. They should have been eaten long ago." Across the chamber, the Chorus delegation clicked their mandibles in laughter. They were insectoid, massive, covered in black shells that could stop bullets. They had conquered 100 worlds through pure brutality. "Humans," their overlord said, "are prey animals who somehow built starships. It is the greatest joke in the galaxy." Everyone knew the stories about humans. They kept pets. They adopted orphaned alien children and raised them as their own. They built hospitals on plague worlds and stayed until the last patient was healed. When disputes arose between species, they suggested talking instead of fighting. Prey behavior. Weakness dressed up as virtue. On the observation deck of the Harmony, young Ensign Big Jiwoo watched the stars and thought about these things. She had heard what other species said about her people. She had seen the contempt in their eyes, the pity in their voices. "Do you think they're right?" she asked Captain Ru Hajin, who stood beside her. "Are we really that weak?" Ru was quiet for a long moment. He was an older man, gray at the temples, with scars on his hands that he never talked about. Before joining the diplomatic corps, he had been something else. Something he had chosen to leave behind. "Jiwoo," he said slowly, "let me tell you something about humans. We are kind because we choose to be kind. We help others because we remember what it was like when no one helped us. But that does not mean we are weak. Then why do we let them laugh at us?" Ru looked at her with eyes that held old shadows. "Because the alternative is worse. much worse. Jiwoo did not understand. She was young. She had grown up in an age of peace, when humanity had decided to be gentle. She did not know what her ancestors had been. She did not know what still slept inside every human heart. On New Bizen, a beautiful colony world in the outer territories, Governor Han Miso walked through a garden with her daughter. The flowers were blooming. Children played in the fountains. Alien families picnicked beside human families on the soft grass. This was paradise. This was everything humanity had worked for. "Mama," her daughter asked, "why do the Karth ships keep flying over our planet?" Miso looked up at the sky. She had seen the patrols. She had filed complaints with the Concord. But the Karth did what they wanted, and no one stopped them. "Don't worry," she said, squeezing her daughter's hand. "They won't hurt us. The Concord protects everyone." She believed this. She had to believe this. 2 million humans lived on New Bizen. Farmers, artists, teachers, dreamers. They had built homes and schools and hospitals. They had created something beautiful. They did not know that the Karth had already decided their fate. They did not know that 12 warships were gathering just beyond sensor range. They did not know that in 3 days, everything they loved would burn. And they did not know that when it happened, humanity would finally show the galaxy what it truly was. The monster that had learned to be kind. The predator that had chosen to be gentle. The sleeping giant that should never have been awakened. The attack came without warning. Governor Han Miso was eating breakfast with her daughter when the sky turned orange. She ran to the window and saw fire falling from the clouds. Massive shapes descended through the smoke. Karth warships, 12 of them, their weapons already firing. The capital city had no shields. No military bases. No weapons platforms. New Bizen was a peaceful world. It had never needed defenses. In 7 minutes, the downtown district was ash. Miso grabbed her daughter and ran. Around them, people screamed and died. Buildings collapsed. The air filled with dust and the smell of burning. She could hear the Karth soldiers landing, their heavy boots hitting the ground like thunder. "Mama," her daughter cried. "Mama, I'm scared." "Keep running," Miso said. "Don't look back. Just keep running." They did not make it far. The Karth soldiers were everywhere. They moved through the streets like a wave, grabbing humans, separating families, herding everyone into groups. Miso fought when they took her daughter from her arms. She screamed and kicked and bit. A Karth soldier hit her with the back of his weapon. She fell to the ground, blood running down her face, watching through blurred vision as her daughter was dragged away. "Mama!" the little girl screamed. "Mama!" The Karth broadcast everything. They sent the images across all frequencies, to every corner of the galaxy. They wanted everyone to see. They wanted everyone to know what happened to weak species who sat on valuable resources. The assembly hall fell silent as the footage played. Representatives watched humans burn. They watched children being torn from their parents. They watched the Karth overlord stand in the ruins of New Bizen's capital and declare that this world now belonged to the Dominion. "Let this be a lesson," the overlord announced. "The weak exist to serve the strong. Humanity has forgotten its place. We are here to remind them." Ambassador Choi Yuna watched from her seat. Her face showed nothing. Her hands were perfectly still on the table in front of her. But something changed in her eyes. Something cold and dark and very, very old. The Vethrak High Commander leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said to his aide, "it seems the humans will finally learn their place. Perhaps now they will stop pretending to be a real civilization." He expected tears. He expected begging. He expected the humans to come crawling to the Concord, asking for help, proving once and for all that they were nothing but prey animals pretending to matter. For one full day, humanity was silent. No messages, no communications, no responses to any hails. Every human ship went dark. Every human station stopped transmitting. It was as if the entire species had simply vanished. The galaxy waited. On the bridge of the Harmony, Admiral Park Dohan received a transmission from Earth. It was marked with a code that had not been used in 200 years. A code that most humans had forgotten even existed. He read the message. His face, always warm and open, went completely still. Dr. Yunari was standing beside him. She would later say that she watched the light leave his eyes and something else take its place. Something that made her take a step back without meaning to. "Sir?" Kanteho asked. "What does it say?" Park did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was different, colder, harder, a voice that did not belong to the gentle admiral they all knew. "Wake the sleeping fleet?" Taiho stared at him. "Sir, I don't understand." "What sleeping fleet?" Park turned to look at him, and Taiho felt fear for the first time in his life. Not fear of an enemy. Fear of his own commander. Fear of whatever was looking at him through Park's eyes. "Did you really think," Park said quietly, "that we forgot how to fight?" Across human space, something began to happen. Ships that had been listed as decommissioned suddenly powered up. Weapon systems that had never appeared in any Concord database came online. Personnel files updated themselves, revealing that farmers had special forces training, that teachers held combat certifications, that artists knew how to kill in 40 different ways. On a station orbiting Earth's moon, General Shin Yunji received her orders. For 20 years, she had pretended to be an agricultural administrator. She had worn simple clothes and talked about crops and smiled at visiting aliens, who patted her on the head and called her harmless. Now she put on a uniform that had been waiting in a sealed locker for 2 decades. It fit perfectly. It had always fit perfectly. "Ma'am," her aide said, "the fleet is ready. All 2,000 ships." Yunji looked at the tactical display. She saw new Bison burning. She saw the chorus ships sitting in orbit like fat predators digesting a meal. 2,000 ships, she said. "That should be enough." Her aide swallowed. "Enough for what, ma'am?" Yunji smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of something that had been caged for 300 years and was finally being set free. Enough to remind the galaxy why they should have been afraid of us all along. In the assembly hall, the Vethric High Commander was laughing at a joke about human weakness when every screen in the chamber flickered. A new transmission was coming in, overriding all other signals, broadcasting on frequencies that should have been impossible to access. Admiral Park Doan appeared on every screen. Behind him, the stars were full of ships. Human ships, warships. Thousands of them, more than anyone had ever seen, more than anyone had believed existed. "This message is for the Korath Dominion," Park said. His voice was ice. "You have killed our children. You have burned our homes. You have made a mistake that cannot be forgiven." He leaned forward, and every species in that chamber felt something they had never felt before when looking at a human. Terror. "We gave you kindness, and you gave us ashes. So now we will give you something else. We will give you a lesson that your species will never forget, no matter how long you survive." The transmission ended. The Korath Overlord stared at the empty screens, his mandibles clicking in confusion. "This is impossible," he said. "Humans don't have warships. Humans are prey." Across the galaxy, humanity answered. They had never been prey. They had just been pretending. Ambassador Choi Yuna stood before the Galactic Concord one final time. She wore the same simple clothes she had always worn. Her hair was pulled back in the same neat style. But everything else about her had changed. Gone was the warm smile. Gone was the gentle voice. The woman who stood at the podium looked like a stranger wearing Yuna's face. 4,000 species watched in silence. No one whispered. No one moved. They had seen the human fleet. They had heard Admiral Park's message. And now they were afraid. For 300 years, Yuna began, we showed you kindness. We built hospitals on your dying worlds. We shared our food with your hungry. We adopted your orphan children and loved them as our own. We did this because we believed it was right. Because we hoped you would see that strength does not have to mean cruelty. She paused. Her eyes moved across the chamber, stopping on the Vethrak delegation, then the Korath representatives, then every species that had ever mocked humanity. You called us weak. You called us soft. You said we were prey animals who somehow built starships. Her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. You were wrong. She activated a holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Human history. Real human history. Not the sanitized version they had shared with the galaxy, but the truth. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that burned cities to glass. Soldiers who marched through poison gas and kept fighting. Scientists who split atoms and immediately asked if they could make the explosion bigger. Generals who invented strategies so brutal that other humans had to create laws forbidding them. The Vethrak High Commander watched a recording of something called nuclear fire erasing a city in seconds. His scales went pale. This, Yuna said, is what we were. This is what we chose to stop being. We looked at ourselves and saw monsters. We saw a species that would destroy itself if it did not change. So we changed. We buried our weapons. We taught our children peace. We decided to be kind. She turned off the display. But we never forgot. We never stopped being what we were. We just locked it away and prayed we would never need it again. Her eyes found the Korath delegation. Their overlord sat frozen in his seat, his mandibles still. You killed our children, Yuna said. You burned our homes. You woke something that should have been allowed to sleep forever. She leaned forward. And now you will learn why every species should fear the humans when they stop smiling. At that exact moment, the first human ships arrived at New Bizon. General Shin Yunji commanded the assault from her flagship, the Vengeful Dawn. She had spent 2 decades pretending to care about farming schedules. Now she remembered who she really was. Status report, she said. 12 Korath warships in orbit, ma'am. They're powering weapons. Yunji smiled that terrible smile again. Let them. The Korath ships opened fire. Their weapons were powerful, designed to crack planets and shatter fleets. They expected the human ships to scatter, to run, to die like the prey animals they believed humans to be. The human ships did not scatter. They flew straight into the weapons' fire. Their shields held. Their hulls were made of materials the Korath had never seen. Their engines were faster, their weapons were stronger, and their tactics were unlike anything in the Concord database. Yunji had studied the Korath for years. She knew how they thought, how they fought, how they died. She knew that they relied on overwhelming force and expected their enemies to break. She did not break. Target their command ship, she ordered. Disable their engines first. I want them to watch what happens next. Within an hour, 6 Korath ships were dead in space. Within 2 hours, all 12 were crippled. Not destroyed, disabled. Yunji wanted survivors. She wanted witnesses. On the surface of New Bizan, Captain Ru Hajin led the ground assault. He moved through the ruined streets of the capital with a squad of soldiers, who had been teachers and farmers and artists just days before. Now they moved like ghosts, like shadows, like death itself. They found Governor Han Mizo in a prison camp, beaten but alive. They found her daughter crying in a corner, too scared to speak. When Rue picked up the little girl and held her, his eyes were wet. "You're safe now," he whispered. "No one will ever hurt you again." Behind him, his soldiers were rounding up Korath prisoners. They did not torture them. They did not kill them. They bound their claws and took their weapons and marched them into holding cells. "Why aren't we killing them?" one young soldier asked. Her name was Song Jian, and she had lost her entire family in the initial attack. Rue looked at her. "Because we're not monsters. We're just people who had to remember how to fight. But they killed. I know what they killed." Rue's voice was hard. "I watched the same footage you did. I felt the same rage. But if we become like them, then they've won. If we kill prisoners and burn cities and slaughter the helpless, then everything we said about being better was a lie." Jian stared at him for a long moment. Then she lowered her weapon. "Yes, sir." Back in the assembly hall, Ambassador Yuna finished her speech. "We will destroy the Korath military. We will free their slave worlds. We will bring their leaders to justice. But we will not commit genocide. We will not murder innocents. We will not become what we hate." She stepped back from the podium. "When this is over, we will return to building hospitals and feeding the hungry and adopting orphans. Because that is who we choose to be. But never forget what you saw today. Never forget what we are capable of." She looked at the Vethrock High Commander, who could not meet her eyes. "Never make us choose to be something else." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the most dangerous predator that had ever existed. And the only reason the galaxy still survived was because humans had decided to be kind. The humans did not want territory. They did not want resources. They did not want slaves or tribute or submission. They wanted something far more terrifying. They wanted justice. Admiral Park Dohan coordinated the entire campaign from the Bridge of the Harmony. The same ship that had carried medicine and food now served as the command center for the largest military operation the galaxy had ever seen. The same gentle admiral who had smiled at alien children now studied tactical maps with cold, calculating eyes. "Report," he said. "Korath Central Command is 3 systems away, sir. Our scouts have identified their defense network. Heavy fortifications, orbital platforms, ground batteries." Park nodded slowly. "And their civilian population?" "Approximately 4 billion on the homeworld. Another 6 billion across their colonies." "We don't touch the civilians." Park's voice left no room for argument. "Our targets are military installations and government buildings. Anyone who surrenders is taken prisoner. Anyone who fights is eliminated. But we do not harm innocents." His officers nodded. They understood. This was not revenge. This was surgery. Cutting out a disease without killing the patient. The campaign moved forward like a wave. Human fleets appeared in Korath space without warning. Their ships moved faster than anything the Korath had ever seen. Their weapons punched through shields that were supposed to be unbreakable. Their soldiers fought with a combination of precision and fury that made the Korath's best warriors look like children playing with toys. Lieutenant Song Jian led a special operations team deep into enemy territory. She had been a kindergarten teacher before the war. She had spent her days singing songs and wiping noses and hugging scared children. Now she moved through Korath. Corridors like a shadow, her team ghosting past security systems that should have been impossible to bypass. Their target was the Korath Overlord himself, the one who had ordered the attack on New Bizan, the one who had stood in the ashes and declared that humans needed to learn their place. They found him in his command center, surrounded by guards, screaming orders into communication devices that no longer worked. "Kill them!" he shrieked when Jian's team appeared. "Kill them all!" His guards raised their weapons. They were the elite of the Korath military, trained since birth to kill. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Jian stood over the Overlord, her weapon pointed at his head. He looked up at her with compound eyes full of fear. "Do it," he said. "Kill me. That's what your kind does, isn't it? That's what all species do when they win." Jian stared at him for a long moment. She thought about her family. Her parents, burned in the initial attack. Her little brother, shot while trying to run. Her students, those beautiful children, herded into camps like animals. Her finger touched the trigger, and then she remembered Ru's words. "If we become like them, they've won." She lowered her weapon. "No," she said. "Death is too easy. You don't get to escape what you did. You're going to live. You're going to stand trial. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life fixing what you broke." The Overlord stared at her in confusion. In his entire existence, he had never seen a species show mercy to a defeated enemy. It was not possible. It was not how the universe worked. But humans were not like other species. Dr. Yunari followed the military campaign with medical teams. She set up hospitals in conquered Korath territory. She treated wounded enemy soldiers with the same care she gave her own people. When Korath civilians saw human doctors saving their children's lives, they did not know how to react. "Why are you helping us?" a Korath mother asked, clutching her sick daughter. "We are your enemies," Nari smiled sadly. "You were never our enemies. Your leaders were our enemies. Your soldiers who killed innocents were our enemies. But you?" She gently took the child and began examining her. "You're just a mother who loves her daughter. Same as any human mother." The Korath mother began to weep. She had been told all her life that humans were weak, pathetic, prey animals good only for subjugation. No one had told her that prey animals would cross the galaxy to heal her child. News of human mercy spread faster than news of human victory. The Vethrak High Commander watched reports coming in from Korath space. He saw human soldiers feeding prisoners. He saw human doctors saving enemy lives. He saw human engineers rebuilding infrastructure they had destroyed. "I don't understand," he said to his aide. "They are winning. They have proven they are the strongest species in the galaxy. Why aren't they acting like it?" His aide had no answer. In the assembly hall, other species began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. These creatures who kept pets and adopted orphans, who built hospitals and talked about peace, had revealed themselves to be the deadliest force the galaxy had ever seen. But they were still building hospitals. They were still talking about peace. They were still being kind. The contradiction made no sense to minds that had always believed strength and cruelty went together. Ambassador Choi Yuna received a transmission from the Vethrak government. A formal apology, an offer of alliance, a promise to never again mock or threaten humanity. She accepted graciously. Then she received similar messages from 30 other species, then 50, then 100. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around a simple truth. Humanity was not just the kindest species they had ever met. Humanity was also the most dangerous. And the only way to survive was to never, ever give them a reason to stop being kind. On what remained of the Korath homeworld's military district, General Shin Yunji watched the last enemy flag come down. The war was essentially over. The Korath military was broken. Their government was in human custody. Their empire was being dismantled. Beside her stood Captain Ruhajin, looking tired but satisfied. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." Yunji nodded slowly. "The hard part starts now." "What do you mean?" She looked at him with ancient eyes. "Fighting was easy. Destroying is always easy. The hard part is what comes next. Rebuilding, healing, making sure this never happens again." She paused, remembering how to put the monster back to sleep. Ru understood. The rage that had driven them here, the fury that had awakened the sleeping fleet, the predator that had come roaring out of 3 centuries of peace. all of it would have to be locked away again. If they could. If humanity still remembered how to be gentle after learning again how to be terrible. That was the question no one could answer yet. The war lasted 4 months. In the long history of galactic conflicts, it was barely a moment. But it changed everything. The Korath Dominion was not destroyed. That would have been the easy choice, the choice that every other victorious species would have made. Instead, it was transformed. Their military was abolished. Their government was restructured. Their leaders faced trials where their crimes were documented and their punishments decided. The overlord who had ordered the attack on New Bizon was not executed. Death would have been too simple, too final, too much like escape. Instead, he was sentenced to spend the rest of his long life helping rebuild what he had destroyed. He was taken to New Bizon and put to work, day after day, year after year, constructing homes for the families his soldiers had shattered. He would live. He would remember. He would see the faces of the children he had orphaned every single day until his last breath. Human justice was not cruel. It was worse than cruel. It was patient. Admiral Ponk Doan returned to the Concord Assembly Hall 1 year after the war began. He did not come as a conqueror. He did not demand tribute or territory or submission. He came with a proposal. The chamber was silent as he walked to the podium. Every species watched him. The Vethrak, the Korath survivors, the hundreds of other civilizations who had once looked at humans with contempt and now looked at them with fear. "We could have destroyed them," Park said quietly. His voice was calm again, almost gentle, almost like the voice of the admiral who had commanded a hospital ship before the war. Every ship, every world, every trace of their civilization. You all saw what we were capable of. And for one terrible moment, he paused. For one terrible moment, we wanted to. The chamber held its breath. But that is not who we choose to be. Park looked out at the assembled species. We fought because innocents were murdered. We stopped because the threat was ended. We rebuild now because the universe should be better than it was. Ambassador Choi Yuna joined him at the podium. Together, they presented the new compact. Humanity would share its military knowledge with the Concord, but only for defense. They would help establish a true peacekeeping force, one that could protect weak species from strong ones, one that could ensure no civilization ever again faced what New Bizon had faced. In return, they asked only one thing. "Never mistake kindness for weakness again," Yuna said. "Never assume that because we choose peace, we cannot make war. Never test us. Never give us reason to wake the sleeping fleet again." The compact was accepted unanimously. On New Bizon, Governor Han Mizo stood on the rebuilt steps of the Capitol building. The city was alive again. New buildings rose where ashes had fallen. Parks bloomed with flowers from a dozen worlds. Children played in fountains, their laughter filling the air. Alien volunteers worked alongside humans, constructing memorials to the fallen. Vethrak engineers helped rebuild power systems. Former Korath soldiers, now serving their sentences, carried building materials under the watchful eyes of human supervisors. Mizo's daughter stood beside her, holding her hand. "Mama," the little girl asked, "are the scary aliens gone forever?" Mizo looked down at her child. There were scars now, visible and invisible, that would never fully heal. But her daughter was alive. Her daughter was safe. Her daughter would grow up in a galaxy that finally understood what humanity truly was. "They're not all scary," Mizo said gently. "Most of them are just people, like us. Some are kind. Some are mean. Some made terrible mistakes." She squeezed her daughter's hand. "The important thing is that we decide who we want to be. Every day, we choose. And we chose to be the kind ones." Across the plaza, Lieutenant Beak Jiwoo watched the rebuilding with tired eyes. She had been an ensign when this started, a young woman who wondered why the galaxy pitied her people. Now she was something else. She had seen war. She had seen humanity at its worst and its best. Captain Ru Hajin stood beside her, as he often did these days. "I used to wonder why the galaxy looked down on us," Jiwoo said. "Now they fear us." Ru shook his head slowly. "The smart ones don't fear us. The smart ones understand us now. What's the difference?" He pointed to where a Karth child and a human child were sharing a meal in one of Dr. Yoon's recovery centers. The Karth child's parents had died in the war. Human families had taken her in, just as humans had always taken in orphans, regardless of species. "We're not predators or prey," Ru said. "We're both. We're whatever we need to be, for whoever needs us. The smart species understand that. They know that as long as they never give us a reason to hunt, we'll be the best friends they ever had." He watched the children laugh together. "And if they do give us a reason, well, they've seen what happens then." In the years that followed, the galaxy told new stories about humanity. They said that humans were the kindest hand and the sharpest blade. They said that humans build hospitals with the same passion they build warships. They said that humans would give you everything they had, share their food, heal your sick, adopt your orphans, defend your weak. But they also said, take their children, and they will take everything you are. They said, the humans were never weak. They were just waiting, hoping, praying they would never have to show their teeth. They said, be grateful that they choose to be kind. Be very, very grateful. Because somewhere in the darkness between stars, the sleeping fleet waited. The warships were powered down. The weapons were locked. The soldiers had returned to being farmers and teachers and artists. But they had not forgotten. They would never forget. And if the galaxy ever made them remember again, nothing would be the same. Nothing would survive. Admiral Park Do-hoon returned to commanding hospital ships. Dr. Yoon Nari went back to healing the sick. Ambassador Choi Yuna continued speaking of peace and cooperation and building a better future. The humans smiled again. They laughed again. They helped again. And the galaxy smiled back and laughed with them and accepted their help. But in the back of every alien mind, in the deepest part of every non-human heart, there lived a new understanding, a new respect, a new and healthy fear. The humans had been gentle. The humans had chosen to be gentle. And the galaxy would do everything in its power to make sure they never ever had to choose differently again.